Eggerland might be the most confusing game series that was only dealt with by one publisher. Other series need lots of overlapping companies to make things extra confusing, but HAL did this all on their own. The Eggerland games are a series of puzzle games that all follow the same general rule set, and they'd eventually become known as The Adventures of Lolo, even in Japan. However, every time there was a release on a new platform, HAL would mix up the contents. So the first Eggerland game was on the MSX computer, and some of that, plus a bunch of other stuff, got shoved into a blender and got turned into Eggerland for the Famicom Disk System. When it came time to release the games in the United States on the NES, HAL shoved this and a few other Eggerland games into a blender, and poured out the US The Adventures of Lolo. But then for later cartridge releases in Japan, they also used the title The Adventures of Lolo, along with things like the title screens and cutscenes, but the contents of the game were completely different. The result is a series that people often equate different versions with each other, but they don't really match up. On the Disk System, Eggerland is not The Adventures of Lolo, though you will find some screens from Eggerland in The Adventures of Lolo. Now I happen to enjoy these games quite a bit. They're nice little puzzle games. But this first Eggerland game, well, they were definitely still figuring things out. The enemy behavior and movement is as consistent, the puzzle design can be unfair, even the very first one, and some truly baffling design decisions. The plot of the game is that you are Lolo, the little blue puffball, and on the eve of your wedding, your fiancée Lala has been abducted. Obviously, the only way that you could possibly get her back is by navigating a 100-room maze of puzzles, finding the key treasures, and then defeating the villain in a game of rock, paper, scissors. Yeah, that's one of the baffling design decisions I mentioned. The labyrinth is laid out in a grid of 10 by 10 screens, and your goal on every screen is to collect all of the hearts, which will unlock the chest, then collect the key in the chest, and that permanently clears the room out while opening all of the doors. Once the doors have been opened, you can freely move in and out of that room. So technically, as you complete rooms, you'll find that additional rooms connected to it are available to you. And theoretically, you'd be expanding the maze. Except it doesn't really work out that way. A lot of the rooms are only solvable if you come in from one particular entrance. What this means is that there's usually only a couple of options available to you. Maybe after you're past the first 20 rooms, things will open up more, but I kinda doubt it. Naturally, collecting all of those hearts in the room is not straightforward. There's always something in your way. Sometimes it'll be blocks that you can just push around. But more often it'll be monsters that have particular ways of moving and reacting to you. This Eggerland in particular has a lot of puzzles that have tight timing. That's something that turns up in all of these games, but the majority of the ones I played here required some fast reflexes to complete. At least when you enter a room initially, everything is frozen until you move. That gives you an opportunity to plan. Many of the series' mainstays are here. The worms that just sit in place and block your way. The skulls and dragons that are inactive until you collect the last heart. And then the skulls move, and the dragons shoot fire whenever you cross in front of them. The Medusas that will shoot in all directions. And the monsters that will throw knives at you if you cross their path. One difference to them here is that they've got some unspecified range. So if you can stay far enough away, then they won't throw anything at you. And that means that they're used in puzzles where you have to ride that line, and it just makes it more annoying. You've got the little green fellows who will chase after you and when they catch up to you and block that square. Plus the armadillo-type enemies that will roll after you if they spot you. Both of these have some very strange walking patterns that are tough to deal with. In later games, the rules for their movement is much more clearly defined. Sometimes when Lolo picks up a heart, they get the ability to shoot a bubble twice. A bubbled enemy can be pushed around, and if you shove them in the water, you can use them as a bridge. Shooting a bubbled enemy will blow them away, and then they'll reappear in their original position a few seconds later. You only get a few shots like this, and they only come from certain hearts. So if you use them incorrectly, or you pick up the hearts in the wrong order, then the puzzle could become unsolvable. and this happens in the very first room. You have to use 2 shots to clear a path to a heart, and then you have a 50-50 chance for which heart locked behind those worms has the other 2 shots you need. Guess wrong, and you have to hit select to end Lolo's life. You have 5 lives, but when you continue, you start out exactly where you left off, so the lives don't really matter. You can also save your progress exactly where you are, and it doesn't even back you out to the main menu of the game when you do that. When you clear some rooms, a passage will open up to take you to a special bonus level where you have to collect the treasure chest in a time limit, and these rooms contain vital treasures that you have to have in order to complete the game. There's other items that you can collect, like this raft that will carry you on currents in the river. Some of the rivers have currents, some don't, and you don't know where they are or what direction they're going until you shove something into it. These currents are required at times to solve puzzles. So again, you have to trial and error, dying a whole bunch until you get it right. That raft is also one of my big annoyances in the early game. There's a room filled with water that you have to pass through to get to the only entrance where you can solve a particularly nasty puzzle. And if you die while doing that puzzle, then you go back to before the water-filled room. And so you have to very slowly drift through the entire room, a process that takes 40 seconds before you can attempt the actually difficult puzzle again. That is not fun. In Japan, this doesn't seem to be an especially popular Eggerland game. Or at least it doesn't get a whole lot of attention. The few comments I could find that were specifically about this version mentioned that they had fond memories of it, though I did see a few people pointing out that it is unfair. And my take on it is, this is a starting point. If you want to play an Eggerland game or Lolo game, play one of the other ones. You would play one of the 3 Famicom cartridge releases, and have a pretty good time with literally hundreds of puzzles. This one is just kinda sloppy still. It comes across like HAL is still feeling their way out with what they can and can't do with a puzzle game. The later ones are much more refined and a lot more fun. So feel free to give this one a miss unless you're an absolute completionist.